The hum of a coffee machine echoes in the suffocating silence of the waiting room. Then, my name, spoken like a death sentence. Isabella, OS. Marina was always the weakest in the family. She can't even take care of her own daughter properly, let alone manage her father's business. Isabella's words pierce me like shards of glass. I stand frozen behind the ajar door of the attorney's office, my hand trembling as I clutch my coffee cup. Tears sting my eyes. She doesn't deserve a cent of the inheritance. After everything she did, abandoning the family when we needed her most? My heart pounds. I hear my brother, Carlos, concur, his voice dripping with disdain. Carlos, OS. Marina's always been irresponsible. Dad was blind with love for her, but now that he's gone, it's time to set things straight. Each word is a hammer blow, shattering the last vestiges of hope. At 42, I discover my own family sees me as a burden, a disgrace, someone unworthy of the love my father showered upon me my whole life. The room spins. 20 years. 20 long years dedicated to caring for my father, sacrificing my career, my dreams, my personal life. While my brothers built their lives, their brilliant careers, I remained in the family home, the dutiful daughter who never left. And now, 3 weeks after the funeral, I learn they plan to exclude me completely from Dad's inheritance. I take a deep breath, fighting the tremor that racks my body. I can't collapse here, not now. Silently, I move away from the door and walk to the hallway window, pretending to admire the city view as I process what I've heard. My mind races back to the countless nights spent by my father's bedside during his long battle with cancer. All the appointments, job opportunities, chances at a new life I canceled because he needed me. I implemented an employee support program, creating an emergency assistance fund, offering professional development courses, and establishing flexible hours for parents who needed to care for their children. These weren't measures that immediately boosted profits, but I knew they were the right thing to do. The results started to appear gradually. Productivity increased, the work environment became more harmonious, and we began receiving resumes from talented professionals who wanted to work with us. Clients commented on the quality of service and how valued they felt. But the most significant moment came 6 months after taking over the company. I was in a meeting with an important client when my phone rang. It was an emergency. A young employee's daughter had been hospitalized with severe pneumonia, and the family couldn't afford the treatment. Without hesitation, I interrupted the meeting and went straight to the hospital. I found Carla, the employee, crying in the pediatric ICU hallway. She had worked in the cleaning department for 10 years, always dedicated and caring, but she lived on minimum wage and didn't have health insurance. "Mrs. Miller," she sobbed when she saw me, "I don't know what to do. The doctors say Sophia needs expensive treatment that could last weeks. I don't have that money." I held her hands and said, "Carla, you don't need to worry about money. I'll take care of everything Sophia needs. Now you just need to focus on taking care of her and staying strong." In the following days, I closely monitored the girl's treatment. I spoke with the doctors, arranged for the best specialists, and made sure the family had all the necessary support. When Sophia was finally discharged, completely cured, I saw in Carla's eyes a gratitude that no corporate profit could provide. The story spread quickly among the employees, not because I had told it. In fact, I asked for confidentiality, but because gestures like that speak louder than words. I began to notice subtle changes in people's behavior. More genuine smiles, greater dedication to work, a sense of loyalty that went beyond mere fulfillment of obligations. It was around this time that I received an unexpected call from Carlos. His voice sounded different, less hostile, almost hesitant. "Mary, can we talk? In person, I mean." We met at a neutral cafe, away from the curious eyes of the family. Carlos seemed to have aged years in the last few months, his expression weary and carrying what seemed to be regret. "I came here to apologize," he said, nervously stirring his coffee. "I heard about what you did for Carla's daughter, and I also heard about other things, about how you're running the company. I remained silent, letting him continue. I was wrong, Mary. Wrong about you, wrong about Dad's intentions. His voice faltered slightly. I always thought you were, I don't know, less capable because you didn't leave home, because you didn't build a career. But now I see you were building something much more important. Carlos. No, let me finish. Dad always said you were special, that you had a different heart. I thought it was just favoritism, that he was being sentimental. But now I understand he saw something in you that I couldn't see. At that moment, I realized my brother was genuinely remorseful. It wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about years of misjudgments, about having underestimated someone he should have supported. I accept your apology, I said softly, but you need to understand that this isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about honoring the trust Dad placed in me and doing what I believe is right. He extended his hand to me. Can I help? I know I still have a lot to learn about true leadership, but I'd like to try. In the following months, Carlos became a valuable ally. He brought his construction experience to help with some company projects, always respecting my position as leader. Edward also gradually drew closer, offering medical consultations for the employee health program. The transformation in the family dynamic was slow but profound. Isabella was the last to accept the new reality, but eventually even she recognized that I had not only preserved Dad's legacy, but had expanded it in ways he would be proud of. A year after receiving the inheritance, I finally decided to pursue a dream that had been postponed for so long, opening my psychology practice. But this time it would be different. It would be a space within the company itself, offering free psychological support to employees and their families. At the opening of the practice, I looked around and saw faces that had become dear to me over those months. Carla was there with little Sophia, now completely healthy and smiling. Mr. Robert, who had become not only a business advisor, but a true friend. My brothers, who had learned to see me not as the failed sister, but a leader who chose a different path. During my speech, I talked about the importance of never underestimating the power of love and dedication, about how true success is not measured only in numbers, but in the difference we make in people's lives. I mentioned how overcoming stories like ours can inspire others to find strength in their own journeys, and if you identify with these experiences of transformation and personal growth, be sure to subscribe to the channel to follow more inspiring stories like this one. I spoke about Dad, about how he had taught me that true leadership is about serving, not being served, about how the most valuable inheritance he had left me wasn't material possessions, but values, principles, the courage to be authentic, even when everyone doubted. When I finished, there was a moved silence in the room. Then a round of applause that seemed to carry much more than mere courtesy. It seemed to carry recognition, respect, genuine affection. That night, alone in the house, I sat in Dad's study, which he had kept exactly as he'd left it. I picked up a pen and began writing in my own journal, a habit I developed during those transformative months. Dear Dad, I wrote, today I fully understood why you trusted me. It wasn't because I was perfect or because I knew all the answers. It was because you knew I would do everything with love, that I would genuinely care about people, that I would honor your values even when it was difficult. I continued writing, pouring onto the paper all the emotions, discoveries, and learnings of that extraordinary year. I wrote about how I had discovered that strength doesn't mean never showing vulnerability, but rather having the courage to be authentic. About how leadership isn't about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions and genuinely listening to the responses. I learned that when we act with true love, when we put the well-being of others above our own interests, the universe conspires in our favor. Employees work better not because they are forced, but because they feel valued. Customers return not only for the quality of the product, but for the quality of the service. The company thrives not in spite of our values, but because of them. I reflected on how I had changed since that terrible day in the lawyer's office when I heard my brothers talking about my supposed weakness. I realized they weren't entirely wrong. I really was different from them. But different didn't mean inferior. It meant I had unique qualities, a unique perspective, a unique strength. The true inheritance, I continued writing, isn't the material possessions we leave behind or receive. It's the love we share, the lives we touch, the legacy of kindness we create. You taught me that, Dad, not through words, but through your example. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. How many people at that moment were going through their own crises, questioning their worth, feeling misunderstood or underestimated? How many devoted daughters were being judged for their choices? How many women were discovering their own strength in adverse circumstances? I thought of all the Carlas in the world, mothers struggling to care for their children with limited resources, dedicated people who go unnoticed because their contribution isn't measured in spreadsheets or reports. I thought of all the women who sacrifice their dreams to care for their families, who are seen as failures for not following conventional standards of success. I returned to my desk and continued writing. Today, I understand that my journey wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about discovering who I truly am, about embracing my unique gifts, about transforming what others saw as weakness into my greatest strength. 2 years had passed since that day in the lawyer's office. The company had not only survived under my leadership, but flourished in ways I hadn't imagined possible. We won social responsibility awards, were recognized as one of the best companies to work for in the region. More importantly, we created a business model that proves it's possible to be financially prosperous without sacrificing human values. The employee support program expanded to include not only healthcare, but also educational support for workers' children, professional development programs, and even a microcredit fund to help employees realize small personal dreams. Carla, for example, secured a loan to open a small bakery in her neighborhood and now supplies products to the company cafeteria. But perhaps the most significant change was in myself. That insecure woman who hid behind her dedication to others to avoid facing her own fears had transformed into a confident leader, able to make difficult decisions without losing her compassionate core. I developed a mentorship program for other women taking on leadership positions, especially those who, like me, were underestimated or questioned for not following the traditional executive model. I discovered that my story resonates with many people who feel out of place in a world that values aggression more than empathy, competition more than collaboration. Women's leadership, I always said in the lectures I began giving, isn't about imitating the male management model. It's about bringing our unique perspective, our natural ability to nurture and develop people, our intuition to understand needs that aren't explicit in reports. During one of these lectures, a young executive asked me, "But how do you deal with people who question your authority because you're too soft?" The question made me reflect on my own journey. "There's a difference between being soft and being weak," I replied. "Being soft is choosing compassion even when it would be easier to be cruel. It's maintaining grace under pressure. It's leading by example, not through fear. That's not weakness, it's refined strength." I told her about the difficult first months, about how I learned that I didn't need to change my personality to be a good leader, but rather learn to use my natural characteristics strategically. My sensitivity allows me to perceive problems before they become crises. My ability to listen helps me make more informed decisions. My empathy creates genuine loyalty, not just obedience. The company continued to grow, but always sustainably and consciously. We refused contracts that required practices that didn't align with our values, even when it meant lower short-term profits. We invested in clean technology, environmentally responsible practices, and partnerships with other companies that shared our vision. Edward, who had become a regular consultant for our health programs, frequently commented on how the company had become a model for other businesses in the region. "You've achieved something that many CEOs with decades of experience can't," he told me during one of our monthly lunches. "You've created a company culture based on genuine values, not just nice slogans." Carlos, in turn, had learned to apply some of our principles to his own construction company. He implemented stricter safety programs, improved working conditions for his employees, and began to get more actively involved in social projects. "You taught me that true success is when everyone wins," he once confessed to me. Isabella was the last to accept the new reality, but eventually even she recognized that I had not only preserved Dad's legacy, but had expanded it in ways that would have made him proud. At a family gathering last Christmas, she pulled me aside and said, "Mary, I need to admit I was wrong about you. You not only proved you deserved the inheritance, you proved you were the only person who could have done it." But the most important validation came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Francisca, already 83 years old, but still lucid and affectionate, came to visit me one Sunday afternoon. She found me in the garden of the house, tending to the rose bushes that Dad loved so much. "Mary," she said, sitting on the bench where Dad used to rest on Sunday afternoons. "You know, I've known your family for many years, don't you? I watched you grow up, I watched your siblings grow up." I stopped watering the plants and sat beside her. "Your father always knew you were special, but I don't think even he imagined how much. You not only took care of him during the most difficult times, you honored his memory in a way that goes beyond any will." Her words deeply moved me. Mrs. Francisca had been a silent witness to our entire family history, having seen moments that not even we, his children, had noticed at the time. "You turned pain into purpose, Mary. You turned sacrifice into strength. You turned love into legacy." She held my hand with her wrinkled, yet still warm hands. "That's much more than a material inheritance. That's a spiritual inheritance." That night, I opened my diary again and wrote, "Today, I understand that all the pain, all the humiliation, all the moments of doubt were necessary to transform me into the person I am today. It wasn't just about receiving an inheritance, it was about becoming worthy of it." I reflected on how my definition of success had completely changed. Before, I saw myself as a failure for not following the traditional path of career and family. Now I understood that my path had been unique, but no less valid. Taking care of Dad hadn't been a sacrifice, it had been a conscious choice to put love above personal ambitions. And perhaps, I continued writing, this is the most important lesson I can share: that there is no single model of success, that each person has unique gifts, a unique purpose, a unique contribution to give to the world, that strength is not about never falling, but about how we get up when we fall. I thought of all the people who had doubted me, who had underestimated me, who had judged me for not following the expected pattern. I realized I no longer felt anger or resentment. I felt, in fact, gratitude, because it was those experiences that forced me to discover my own strength, to develop my own voice, to create my own path. I thought of all the people who had doubted me, who had underestimated me, who had judged me for not following the expected pattern. I realized I no longer felt anger or resentment. I felt, in fact, gratitude, because it was those experiences that forced me to discover my own strength, to develop my own voice, to create my own path. I thought of all the people who had doubted me, who had underestimated me, who had judged me for not following the expected pattern. I realized I no longer felt anger or resentment. I felt, in fact, gratitude, because it was those experiences that forced me to discover my own strength, to develop my own voice, to create my own path.